Welcome to another episode of the Goo Intelligence Sports Podcast Show. Today on the show, we're going to be discussing the NFL's schedule release, and I'm going to give you my prediction on the New Orleans Saints NFL record for the 2020 season. So let's jump right into it. Yesterday, the NFL released the schedule for all 32 teams. Right now, it's still up in the air if fans are going to be attending these games, but let's hope that they do. Okay? So, with that being said, my predictions on the NFL, on the Saints, I should say, the Saints record are based upon what any NFL team, for lack of a better word, for what any NFL team likes, right? Continuity. Not much changeover. And the Saints right now have that going to their benefit. Because unlike other teams like, say, the Buccaneers, we don't have a new quarterback coming into the season. So from that standpoint, the Buccaneers, with there being no OTAs that are going to be allowed by the NFL, all the NFL facilities are still closed as of May 8th. So there is no way that a team like the Buccaneers or the Raiders or Jacksonville or the Carolina Panthers are going to be able to compete at a high level when the season starts. So let's jump right into it. Week 1, the New Orleans Saints open the season in the Superdome with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I got the Saints winning that game. I don't have a score prediction. Because I don't know what the rosters are yet. But I have the Saints winning that game. Why do I have the Saints winning that game? Because just like I said, continuity. The Bucs don't have it. The Saints do. And for that reason, I have the Saints winning that game, week 1. Week 2, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. The Saints visit the Las Vegas Raiders on a Monday night football game. It's the opening of the Las Vegas Raiders' new stadium in Las Vegas. Saints win that game. You thought I was about to say that the Raiders are going to be emotionally charged and they'll come out and take the... No. Because just like I just said about the Buccaneers, the Raiders, they don't even know who their quarterback is going to be right now. They don't know if it's going to be Derek Carr or if it's going to be Marcus Mariota. The Raiders also don't know how their wide receivers are going to look. They took three in the NFL draft. Saints win that. Right now, the Saints are at 2-0, going into week 3 against the Green Bay Packers, back in the Superdome on Sunday night. Saints win. Why do the Saints win? The Saints win for the very same reason that they would have beaten the Packers last year in the playoffs. The Packers are a one-man band. That's Aaron Rodgers. That's it. Who else do I have to stop? Nobody else. The Packers didn't have the decency to even upgrade the wide receiver position, which they struggled with down the stretch in the playoffs. If Devontae Adams isn't beating anyone, then Aaron Rodgers isn't beating anyone. There's only so much that he can do. I got the Saints beating the Packers. Next up is the Detroit Lions in Detroit. I don't need to tell you why I think the Saints win that game. Who does Detroit have to fear? Nobody. Saints just have a better roster. They have the better team, period. Next is the Los Angeles Chargers. I've been messing up that name for weeks now. I've been still calling them San Diego. But the Los Angeles Chargers come to town in the Superdome and play the Saints. This is Drew Brees going up against his original team. And this is Drew Brees possibly the last time he's going up against his former team, his original team that drafted him. This is also a primetime game. Saints win. The Saints always seem in primetime games to play much better than what they do at, say, 12 o'clock or 3:15 game. So with that being said, Saints primetime, Drew Brees against his former team. Drew Brees possibly the last time against his former team. I got the Saints winning. The Panthers visit the Saints in the next week. So right now I have the Saints winning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games. The Saints are at 5-0 right now. It's week 6. The Carolina Panthers come to town with Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback, Christian McCaffrey at running back. Saints win because, like I said, going back to my first 2 victories that I gave the Saints about continuity, the Panthers don't have it right now. They have a new offensive coordinator. They have a new head coach. They have a new quarterback. They have 7 new defensive players because Matt Rule took 7 players. He used all of his draft picks on defense. Saints win. That's not the only reason why the Saints win. The Saints also win because Joe Brady comes to town running the very offense that the Saints practice against on a daily basis. Carolina, unless something catastrophic happens to the Saints, in my opinion, should never beat the Saints because you are practically running the same offense that I practice against. Joe Brady admitted to running the Saints offense at LSU. And people don't change who they are when they leave and go to different situations. They just bring who they are to the new situation. So the Panthers are going to be running the Saints offense. Some of the things, they may change the verbiage of these plays, but I mean, once you look at something, and as much as film as these NFL players are studying, once they see it, they already know what it is. Don't matter what you call it. They know what it is. So I got the Panthers winning. I'm at the Saints beating the Panthers. Saints are now at 6-0. The next is the Chicago Bears in Chicago. November 1st. It might be cold. I still got the Saints winning. I got the Saints winning for the simple fact that who's the quarterback? Is it Mitch Trubisky? Is it Nick Foles? Either way it goes, they have no continuity. Either way it goes. Saints beat the Bears. Next is the Saints versus the Buccaneers. This is where I have the Saints losing their first game. The game is in Tampa, and we are now 2 months into the season with Tom Brady. I think Tom Brady has his stuff together by now. And I think the Buccaneers possibly win a very close game, but ultimately they win the game. Next, we have the San Francisco 49ers coming back to the Superdome on November 15th. The NFL got this one right, too, with the time. I remember last season they scheduled this game at 12 p.m. And refused to move off it to either flex it to a different time, but they just refused to move it and kept it at a 12 o'clock kickoff, even though the 49ers are from the West Coast, and usually when teams from the West Coast go east, they usually start at 3:25, 3:15. But nevertheless, because they don't want a 10 o'clock kickoff back on the West Coast. That's too early in some people's eyes for the NFL for a 10 o'clock kickoff. But this time they move it to 3:25. I have the Saints winning this time. The Saints should have beaten the 49ers last season, but they didn't. And because they didn't, we ended up with the third seed, and we all know what happened. But Saints get the win against the 49ers this time, due to them just being better prepared. I think they're that loss against San Francisco, and by this time, there's going to be some positioning for NFL seeding, and the Saints are going to have that bad taste in their mouth from last season, and they're going to get the victory this time. So right now, I have the Saints at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8-1, 8-1. Next is the Falcons against the Saints. Saints are playing in Atlanta, December 6th, 12 p.m. Saints win. Saints win for the simple fact that the Atlanta Falcons are just not they don't have the better roster. They don't have the better team. I think the Saints are more prepared. Last season, the Falcons did beat the Saints in the Superdome. After a bye week, Saints came out sluggish, which they normally do after bye weeks. But this game here is not after a bye week. Saints win. Saints versus Broncos. Next game. I have the Saints losing this game. The Saints have never played well in Denver, historically. I believe the record is like maybe 6-10 or something like that. It's something crazy. But the thin air, the game is on November 29th. It's going to be very cold. And secondly, from a standpoint that it's an AFC game, the Saints will probably go there, play the game. If they get close and it's a game going into the fourth quarter, they might try to win. But other than that, I don't necessarily think they would even think they need the game to win. So I got the Broncos beating the Saints. Right now, I have the Saints at 9-2. Next is the Falcons again. So played the Falcons 2 weeks ago, and then we're back home against the Falcons. Saints win this game due to the simple fact that it's a home game. And this game here is on. I'm sorry, this is the game on December 6th. Yes, this is the game on December 6th. The first game was on November 22nd. But this is the game on December 6th. It's still not after a bye week, so Saints win. Next is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. The Saints travel to Philadelphia to play the Eagles. I got the Saints winning this game as well. The Eagles are very inconsistent, and they strike me as a team that is very young, and they are that, especially after this draft, and they are going to be reliant upon Carson Wentz again. And depending on if Carson is still healthy by this time, because Carson has yet to show that he can play healthy every game. He's not always hurt, but most of the time he has some kind of lingering injury. With that being said, this is a December 13th game. It is cold. It is at Lincoln Financial Field, but I still have the Saints winning because the Saints have went to Lincoln Financial and won before, and they did it in the playoffs. Next is the Kansas City Chiefs coming to the New Orleans Superdome, Mercedes-Benz Superdome, I should say. Chiefs win this game. Chiefs win this game because of the simple fact they just have the better team. I think at this point they have the better team. The Chiefs are probably firing on all cylinders, and they come to the Superdome and probably win a close game, but nevertheless they win. So right now I have the Saints at 11-3. We have the Minnesota Vikings in the next game on Christmas Day. Saints win, and the Saints win big. I've always said this, and I just said it a couple minutes ago. The Saints in primetime games are games where they're the only team playing at that time. really step up to the plate and just play lights out. And the Vikings are going to be in for a whooping because the Saints are going to have that playoff loss on their mind. And I really believe they're going to. This is the only game I'll probably give a score prediction. I'm saying somewhere like 37-20. I really believe the Saints are going to beat the bricks off the Vikings on Christmas Day. Next is the Carolina Panthers to end the season. Saints win. I told you why. You're not going to lose to a team that's running your offense. You're not. You're not going to lose to that team. And this is the last game of the season. Depending on the other records of the other positions, the Saints are at 12-3 entering this game. They may not need it. They may not necessarily need it. If they need it to clinch a number one seed, they go out there and they get the victory. If they don't need it and the seeds have already been wrapped up, they may sit the starters. But you have to remember, going into the playoffs this year, there's only going to be one team that gets a bye week. Only one. The other teams have to play. And they added a 17th. So there's only one team with a bye week. So you can bet your bottom dollar if there is more than one team that needs a victory to clinch a spot, they're going to be playing their starters in week 17. Just that plain and simple. So I have the Saints on the 2020 NFL season finishing with a record of 13-3. The Saints have one of the most stacked rosters in the league. That's not my opinion. That's fact. The Saints have one of the most established coaching staffs in the league. I don't think they're replacing any coaches. Could be wrong, but I don't believe so. I don't believe they are. The Saints, from that simple standpoint, win the division, and I would say, they're in the Super Bowl conversation. They're there. But for the last 2 years, we've seen one, albeit NFL referees, and the next year just basically being outplayed. The Saints have a real shot at competing again for a Super Bowl berth. Will they get it? That's yet to be seen. We don't know yet. But a record of 13-3 and possibly a number one seed moves you one step closer to your ultimate goal. With that being said, I'm going to give a Super Bowl prediction. I got Saints-Chiefs in the Super Bowl this year. Saints versus the Kansas City Chiefs. On to my next topic. Today, on May 9th, the Saints decided to cut Larry Warford, offensive guard. The Saints drafted Cesar Ruiz out of Michigan to play center. It's been stated that Eric McCoy would more than likely switch to guard, and Cesar Ruiz will step in at the center position. I addressed this earlier on one of my other videos to my draft reaction video, that Warford played injured, and Warford also struggled with the responsibility of the offensive line calls. The Saints owed Warford this year $13 million. They were not going to pay him that amount of money to underperform. Larry Warford is a Pro Bowl All-Pro guard. He was the 8th best guard in the NFL this past season. The 8th best. He will find another job. Plain and simple. Will it be at $13 million? I highly doubt it. But the Saints made a move where they thought that they can go cheaper at that particular position, with the results maybe being the same. Because Larry, although he did play hurt, he did play injured, he was still the 8th best. It's just that the Saints decided that $13 million is a lot of money, and they have a lot of expiring contracts on players they would love to keep. Marshawn Lattimore, Alvin Kamara, Demario Davis, being 3 of them. So with that being said, if it's for the betterment of the team, I will support it, although I am against it. I've been against it since day one, since they drafted Caesar. I didn't think that offensive lineman was a need with Patrick Queen on the board. But since they took a linebacker in the 3rd round, I've stepped off that position because they did what I expected or wanted them to do, which was get a linebacker. They did that. So I'm not going to crucify anyone over them actually doing what I wanted them to do. With that being said, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in to the Goontelligence Sports Podcast show today. Once again, I have the Saints at 13-3 for the 2020 season with a Super Bowl berth against the Kansas City Chiefs. Who wins that game? I think hopefully the Saints get their revenge, because I did have the Chiefs beating the Saints in the regular season. So hopefully the Saints get their revenge in the Super Bowl, which would be, I'd rather lose the regular season game than lose the Super Bowl. But this has been another episode of the Goontelligence Podcast show. Comment, like, subscribe to the channel if this is your first time viewing. I'd like to thank y'all again for watching the video. You could have been watching any other video on YouTube, but you chose to watch mine. Thank you. And peace, and I'll check you on the next episode.